Have you ever had one of those moments? You've got this brilliant plan, a perfect strategy, and then, overnight, the world just changes and makes it all completely irrelevant. It's a terrifying thought. But what if that exact moment of failure is actually the beginning of your greatest success? That's what we're diving into today. One of the most powerful moves in business, the strategic pivot.
And this quote right here, it just gets right to the heart of it all. I mean, it sounds simple, doesn't it? But it's one of the absolute hardest things for any leader, or really any of us, to do. Admitting you were wrong isn't about failure. As we're about to see, it's actually this incredibly brave move, and it's the very first step to figuring out what's next.
You know, every great pivot starts with a shock to the system. Some external force that's so powerful, it basically turns your current path into a dead end. And our story today kicks off with a company that, by all accounts, was totally destined for greatness. So, meet Odeo. Now, this wasn't just some startup in a garage. Its co-founder, Evan Williams, had already sold a company to Google. They had millions in funding, a team packed with brilliant engineers, and a super clear vision. They were going to make podcasting mainstream. They were literally building the future of audio. And then, in 2005, boom, everything changed, and it changed fast. Apple, the biggest player in the digital audio world, announced that podcasting would be a free, built-in feature in iTunes, available on every single iPod. In one single move, Odeo's entire business model just vanished. I mean, why would anyone use a separate startup's platform when the world's best was now free and already installed on your device? So the world changed. That happens. But the real test isn't what happens on the outside. It's the decision you make on the inside. This is that moment of truth, where a legacy is either made or completely lost. Seriously, put yourself in their shoes for a second. What do you do? Do you just double down, try to fight the giant, and insist your way is better? Or do you have the courage to just stop, look at your team, and say, well, that didn't work. So, what's next? This is that exact fork in the road where legacies are made or broken. On one side, you've got companies like Netflix and Intel that made that incredibly courageous turn. And on the other, well, you have companies like Blockbuster and Kodak that just couldn't let go of the past. So why is it so hard to make that turn? A lot of the time, it's because companies get trapped by their own success. I mean, get this. Kodak actually invented the digital camera, but they killed the project because they wanted to protect their film sales. And BlackBerry, they got obsessed with perfecting the physical keyboard, optimizing for a market that the iPhone was making obsolete, like overnight. They were perfecting the old game while Apple was inventing a whole new one. Often, the solution requires a brutal outsider's perspective. Intel's CEO Andy Grove found one with this legendary question. He was facing insane competition in the memory chip market, and he turned to his number two and asked, if we got kicked out and the board brought in a new CEO, what would he do? And the answer was immediate. He would get us out of memories. And just that little bit of clarity gave them the courage to make one of the toughest decisions of their lives. But once you let go of the old strategy, you're kind of just left in a void, right? This is the leap of faith, that jump into the unknown. It's a moment that's driven by constraints, but also by incredible creativity. Right, so back at Odeo, Evan Williams didn't panic and demand a new billion-dollar idea. He did something way smarter. He told his teams to break into small groups and spend 2 weeks building anything they wanted. There was only one rule. It couldn't be a podcasting product. He basically created freedom by setting a single powerful constraint. And Odeo's process, it gives us this perfect little playbook. It starts with the brutal honesty to just acknowledge failure, no excuses. Then you set new constraints, which, weirdly enough, creates freedom by giving the team a new sandbox to play in. And finally, you empower experimentation. You trust that the answer is probably already hiding somewhere within your team, maybe in some forgotten side project. And that is exactly what happened. The next world-changing idea didn't come from some grand strategic plan. Nope. It came from a weird little side project that almost nobody was taking seriously. So, during those 2 weeks of just messing around, an engineer named Jack Dorsey pitched this idea he'd been tinkering with. It was a really simple service for sharing your status with a small group of friends. I mean, compared to the huge, sophisticated podcasting platform they'd built, it seemed almost trivial. The project was built around this weird technical limitation, the 140-character limit of old-school SMS text messages. Now, this limitation, which could have been seen as a huge flaw, it forced this kind of brutal brevity. It wasn't a bug. It became the defining feature of a whole new way to communicate. So, Odeo, the podcasting company, it shut down. But from its ashes, that little side project, born from failure and experimentation, was spun out into its own company. And it was called Twitter. Now, Odeo's story isn't just some lucky one-off. This pattern of accidental breakthroughs happens all the time. For instance, what could a failed video game possibly... Well, turns out it has everything to do with it. A company called Tiny Speck was building a game called Glitch. The game itself was a flop, but the internal chat tool they built for themselves to coordinate the development, it was incredible. They realized the tool was way more valuable than the game, so they pivoted, and that tool became Slack.
Okay, or how about this one? A confusing, feature-packed, location-based app called Bourbon.
So it was loaded with features, but when they looked at the data, people were only using one of them obsessively, sharing photos. So the founders made the painful choice to strip away everything else, and that single beloved feature became Instagram.
So what's the big lesson in all of these stories? It's that the path to success is almost never a straight line. It's about having the vision to start, for sure, but also having the courage to make the turn when you need to.
All right, let's boil it all down. The turn teaches us a few huge things. First, external shocks, they're going to happen. It's inevitable. Second, admitting you're wrong isn't a weakness. It's a strategic superpower. Third, your next big breakthrough might just be hiding in plain sight as a little side project. And finally, the courage to let go isn't about giving up. It's the only thing that allows you to move forward.
And that brings us to the final question. And this one is for you. You know, it's easy to see these lessons in huge companies, but they apply to all of us, in our careers, our projects, our lives. So take a look around. What's the thing you're tinkering with? The idea you maybe dismiss as trivial? What's the side project in your world that if you just had the courage to focus on it, might just hold the key to your entire future?